Greetings, students, and welcome to this episode of The Professor Travel. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where you come to in order to discuss them as a community. This is where we also go to together in order to hopefully inspire you to travel to new and interesting destinations and finally to enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different social media out there, including my website, which is at theprofessortravel.com. On YouTube and Facebook, I can also be reached at theprofessortravel.com. I am now available on TikTok at theprofessortravel.com. If you are an Instagrammer, you can find me there at the_professor_travel. I'm also available on Twitter at theprofessortr1. And then finally, if you're a blogger, you can find me at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, we have two of my favorite visiting professors, Matt Allen and Kimbra Shaffer. Say hi to the students for me, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Now, I've had an opportunity to work with both Matt and Kimbra a couple of times on their podcast, which is called Fintastic Cruising, which is, if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to it, I highly recommend it. You guys are amazing, especially in talking about anything related to cruising or cruise creatures. But just for the benefit of my students, can you tell me a little bit about your educational background and maybe some places that you've traveled before?
Sure. You want to go first, Kimbra?
Sure. So educational background, I don't have much, sort of.
That's okay.
But as far as travel, I've been on 5 cruises.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I haven't really traveled the world. So I started cruising in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first cruise. So I've been on 5 since then. The first cruise I did, I loved it. And that's definitely the way to go.
Excellent. How about you, Matt?
So my education is in education. I have a degree in educational studies. I've been teaching science, and I've been a zookeeper and then teaching science for the last 20 some odd years. So that's my education background. My travel background is pretty sad up until I discovered cruising, which is around 2012. Before that, I had barely been to any states. I moved to Florida from Missouri because I love Florida. So that was kind of my exotic destination before that. Once I discovered cruising, though, it opened up a whole new realm. And so I've been to a lot of different Caribbean islands, Mexico, Central America, and hope to get further out there someday.
Excellent. Also, I have to, just for my students to know, talk to me just a quick snippet about this picture that we have on the screen right now. This is so awesome. And by the way, Kimbra, even though your educational background is not vast, you guys have a unique perspective on your travel, and that you do a lot of things either through scuba or through snorkeling and underwater. So talk to me a little bit about this picture. Where was this done at?
Yeah, this was at in Grand Cayman
Mm-hmm.
at Eden Rock. So you'll hear about it a little bit later. But we went diving. That was actually my first dive. I got certified right before we went on this cruise. So I was really excited. So yeah, that's where this picture is from.
First ocean dive.
Yes, my first ocean dive. That's right.
Oh, that's right, because you have to dive like on the shoreline or inside of a river area during your first dive. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So my certification dives for training were done in the Springs here in Florida, mm-hmm. And then right before we went on our cruise, I did the dive with the sharks at the Florida Aquarium, just to give myself kind of a you're certified, go do a dive before you go out into the wild.
That's excellent. So I'm really liking this picture. You guys do a great job. And as I said to my students, they have so many wonderful stories. They have so much wonderful advice. Fintastic Cruising can be available on a variety of different podcast locations. I download it through Apple. You guys are amazing. So again, just keep up the great work that you guys do. But for purposes of this vlog and podcast, you guys were recently on a cruise to a few different destinations, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me. Where do we go for the purpose of this cruise?
So this cruise was on the Brilliance of the Seas out of Tampa, Florida. And we went to Grand Cayman and Cozumel. It was a 5-night cruise, so 1 sea day on each end, and then the ports in the middle.
Fantastic. Awesome. Now, how long in advance did you have to start to plan for this?
When did we start planning?
I think we decided to book it in October, November.
Was it that late?
Yeah, because it was after the other cruise that we booked. We booked the other
Oh,
cruise
right,
first.
right. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so I
That's
would
right.
say it was.
We have another cruise, hopefully for October.
Yes, I want
It's
to. That one's coming up here really fast. That one's going to
Yes.
the ABCs. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
so
I'd say I think October, November is when we booked this cruise, and it went out in February. So just a few months before. We didn't go. It was kind of a last minute. We were like, let's just book it.
it's one of the nice things about living in a place like Florida, especially Tampa, is that you're right there by the cruise ship, so it's a lot easier to do sort of a last minute ish or last weeks or month ish cruise instead of having to worry about all the other things that go along with travel.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you don't have to worry about airfare. You don't have to worry about a lot of like, maybe just have a friend drop you off at the port if you have to, or park there locally. It's not too big of a deal if that's the case. So there are a lot of advantages. If you have a port near you, students, seriously check it out. It's actually a really good opportunity. And also one other thing, just because I mentioned ABCs, I didn't elaborate. For the purpose of my students, that would be Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, awesome. Very nice. Now, in preparation for your trip, did you have to get any type of special like travel visas, travel medications, or did you have to prepare ahead of time for anything specific?
The only thing that you need for your basic Caribbean travel on cruise ships is going to be some form of way to get on the cruise ship, which we recommend getting your passport. You can do a passport card, or you can do an official birth certificate with the embossed deal and a form of ID. But there's some complications there if you're going someplace and you get stranded or something like that. So honestly, I strongly recommend getting your passport.
Yeah, passport's the way to go.
Good for a long time, and then you're ready to go wherever you need to go, or if you want to fly somewhere, something like that. So that's about it, though. I guess the only other thing that we got ahead of time was travel insurance.
Yes.
Oh, and considering everything that's going on right now with the coronavirus, I think that's probably the way to go. And I even mentioned to you guys, I recently was on one of their podcasts as well. Right when I was speaking with them, I was actually due to be on my very first Caribbean cruise. So, and that one was canceled. And thankfully I had travel insurance that got me out of that situation, and I got fully refunded for that. So there are advantages to it. So don't just think of it as like, a drop in the bucket. It's actually really good. So
the thing I always tell, the thing that sold me on travel insurance, because honestly, like the cost of losing that cruise, like it would have burned a little bit if we would have had to cancel that cruise. But the real thing that scares me about travel insurance is if you have a medical emergency, you have to get medical help, or if you have to get like airlifted off of a ship. I mean, you're talking about life-changing costs and stuff. So that's what sold me. And usually travel insurance is not that expensive for a cruise at all. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I've looked into a couple of different types of travel insurances, and usually there's a couple of different, like there's usually at least 3 different options. And the options are like just for like almost like we have through the Affordable Care Act, which is like a bronze plan, a silver plan, and a gold plan type thing, where on the basic plan you can get some very basic coverage, but on the gold plan you can get like airlifted if you need to in order out of certain places, and so that can be very helpful. So again, thank you so much for that information. In preparing for this cruise, also, what kind of, like, in pre-packing, what kind of weather did you guys plan for?
So it's the Caribbean, so shorts, t-shirts, swimwear, ready to be out in the sun. So yeah, it was pretty light.
Pretty easy. Although I will say this, I mean, we did go in February and we were going far enough south that we knew it was going to be fairly warm when we got there. However, leaving out of Tampa, it was a bit chilly. Sometimes people don't realize this if they're not from Florida. It gets cold in Florida, not compared to, not relevant to like Minnesota,
Yeah.
but it's I think it was in the 50s or something, that maybe the 40s even that morning when we got up. So it was a little chilly. So if you are going to cruise out of Florida and you're in those winter months, especially I would say January, February, you want to maybe bring at least like a light jacket or something. And Kimbra went on a cruise the year before, and that was in January.
It was in January,
and she was a little disappointed to some degree because it was cold and like
it was cold almost
Nassau.
The whole cruise, and so if you're going to cruise at that time, make sure you're going far enough south that it's not miserable.
It's a little surreal to be on a Caribbean cruise and it's cold. It doesn't feel right. It's just, there's something
Yeah.
like if you were cruising to Alaska, I'm sure that's like, part of the experience. But when you're heading to the Caribbean, you're like, no, this should not be a thing. I should not be wearing layers.
Can I also ask you another question really quick that I just immediately thought of? Now, you guys have a bunch of pets, and preparing for going on a cruise, like how would you deal with that? Like I know for most part the snake, for example, you can leave for a week, but your dog, someone's got to take them on walks and stuff like that. Like, did you have to kennel the dog, or did you what was the situation?
Yeah, so I use a service called Rover, and it's basically like a dog sitter app. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's an app. It's also a website. It's a service, I guess. So it's kind of like you go through and you find people that sit dogs.
Okay.
You ask them if they can sit your dog. Usually, like you'll meet up, whatever. I have a sitter that I use regularly through Rover that I met, I don't know, soon after I moved down to Florida, and she's like my go-to. So whenever I'm going out of town or whatever, I send him, get on Rover and say, hey, my dog needs a sitter. She's like, cool. I go drop him off. So it's nice because he's not kenneled. He's not, in a cage the whole time. He's got that personal experience.
Yeah. He comes back a little spoiled. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, he definitely comes back spoiled. He's, big backyard that he runs around in compared to coming back and I stick him on a leash and walk him. But yeah, so it's called Rover. Yeah.
That's good. Awesome.
Pretty good deal. Yeah, the snakes we have 2 snakes and they're like, as long as they have water, they're good for a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No worries.
Awesome. And then in terms of sun protection for this kind of a cruise, because I would imagine even in like the winter months, whether it's January or February, you would still need some kind of sun protection, especially in the Caribbean, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So we brought lots of sunscreen. I think I usually do a lighter sunscreen and then something more protective for the face because I like to burn my face.
It's very appealing. So
yeah. See what he did there? Now here's one thing I will say though, because we are in the water a lot, we're around coral reefs, we're very conscientious of that. So sunscreen in general is really bad for the coral reef ecosystem and even other ocean ecosystems it can be bad for. So whenever we're in the water, we try and wear rash guards. We try and minimize the amount of sunscreen we have to use. And what we do have to use, we try and make sure that we're using a biodegradable reef-safe sunscreen. They can be, sometimes it's getting better, but they can be a little bit pricier, and sometimes they don't work as well. So you want to test some brands out maybe. But yeah, if you do get a good one, then that's definitely something to think about.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then did you have to have any type of bug repellent on this type of a trip?
We didn't need any. There might be some excursions that it would be needed, but for what we did, we didn't. I think we created like a first aid kit that had all that kinds of stuff, and we had some, but we didn't use it.
Okay.
The only place in the Caribbean or on Caribbean cruises that I've ever gone that I needed insect repellent was in Roatan, Honduras. There's a lot of sandflies on the beaches there at certain times of the year. And I'm sure some of the more inland expeditions, if you're around mangrove trees, there's going to be a lot of mosquitoes. But most honestly, that's the only time of all the excursions I've ever done, it's the only time I've ever felt a need for insect repellent was in Roatan. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, you guys live in the Tampa area, correct?
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about what was the transportation like to the port? Did you guys just take an Uber? Did you guys drive yourselves and park there? How did you guys manage that for any of my listeners who may be in the Tampa area?
So we actually drove. Okay. So we work at the Florida Aquarium, which is right between all the cruise terminals. So we actually have the advantage of being able to park there during our cruises and when we go out of town. So we drove to the terminal, we parked at the aquarium.
It was like going to work.
Basically. And then we got on the ship. So we didn't have to worry about, anything with parking or paying for parking or any of that sort of stuff. It was really easy for us.
Yeah, the aquarium parking lot is actually closer to the cruise ship than the official cruise ship parking lot.
Nice.
So, so it's a little bit crazy. The downside to that is that all the times we go to work and we're not getting on the cruise ship and we have to walk past all the people getting on and off the cruise ship, that can be a little painful. You know, we see cruise ships when we're eating lunch, and that sometimes that's a little rough, but also kind of cool, but also a little rough.
You know, and I wanted to talk to you about this really quick too, because I know you may mention on your podcast a couple of times about the recent kind of cruise blues that are going on right now. A lot of people are wanting to travel. They're not able to travel. We're all locked in our houses for the most part, you know, except for going out for supplies and stuff like that. But I'm starting to hear rumblings about, you know, the ability to go back on cruises and planning for this. I know you guys are definitely looking forward to the October cruise. So it's just to inspire my students that are out there. I just want to say to all of you who are out there listening, keep in mind, there's a lot of really great things that are coming up. Obviously be safe, you know, be healthy. But, you know, just from my personal perspective, I don't see cruising going away. I don't see cruising, I don't see the cruise industry going anywhere anytime soon. And I own stock in all three of the major cruise lines. So for me, it's just going to be one of these things where we just have to wait a little bit longer in some cases, but I can definitely see things moving forward. So just hang in there, guys.
Yeah,
hang in there, kitty.
I agree with that. And I think that, you know, people need to be cautious and safe, and you need to use your own judgment for you. Like, we're more worried, and considering my mom's going with us, and she's in her 70s, so we're going to be a little bit more careful when it comes to that. But at the same time, I don't really, cruise ships kind of got painted as this really bad example with the coronavirus, and I don't necessarily think that's fair. Yes, it is easy to transmit things like that on a cruise ship, but in the long run, I don't think it's going to be any different than making a decision to fly on an airplane or go to a crowded facility. I think it's going to hopefully get back to where we were beforehand.
Or amusement parks. Well, I mean, you live
Right.
relatively close to Disney World. I live very close to Disneyland, and those places have been shut down for a little while now. But I know that they're already in the process of starting to have plans to start up again. So it's just a matter of like wherever you're going. But I think I agree with you, especially because a lot of the cruise ships that I've been on within the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, have had handless, dispensaries for, antibacterials and things like that already. So they were already used to things like the norovirus and stuff like that, which will occasionally crop up. So they're always kind of almost overly planning for these types of things, which is great in some cases. And so when something like this happens, it's good to know that they have some level of precaution. And I know that there are some things that are coming off across the board to help with additional things like social distancing measures and the like. So I will say, moving forward, when the students that are out there are looking into cruising, there may be some changes that are coming around the bend, but I think for the most part, the cruise industry is going to remain the same. And it is a wonderful industry. I try to, like, ever since I've rekindled my love for cruising over the last couple of years, I have been going on a cruise every single year since, and I don't see any way of me stopping that. So I just want to share that with you. Don't be afraid to do this, kids. So, okay. So in terms of flights and pre-vacation destinations, that doesn't apply to you in this particular case, but accommodations do. Talk to me about the Brilliance of the Seas. What were your first impressions of the ship?
Well, it was interesting because I have been on a few Royal Caribbean ships, but Kimbra, you had never been on a Royal Caribbean ship. So I was really excited to get back on Royal because my experiences on Royal have always been very positive. And this one was as well. The ship, though, we see it so often, like parked outside the aquarium, that, for like the entire time we're like, wait, how many more sailings? And, like you mentioned theme parks, I was imagining we were in line and how many more, if you count the roller coaster every time it comes by and you count the people ahead of you, just kind of thinking of in that respect. But it's a great ship. It's a smaller ship. It's an older ship. It's got a lot of glass, a lot of windows. So it's a lot of sunlight coming through. It's a beautiful small ship, and it's got a section on it, which a lot of the smaller Royal Caribbean ships have, which I cannot think of the name of right
Solarium?
now. Yes, thank you. The solarium, which is an enclosed roof pool area that is for adults only.
Mhm.
And it's got like a hot tub, it's got swimming pool, it's got a little
It's a glass roof.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
glass roof.
yeah, and it's
So
got like a healthy-ish eating thing there, and it's so there's some really nice amenities on the ship. So it's a great ship. Kimbra, what did you think?
so it was, like you said, it was my first royal ship, so it was completely different like world when we walked onto it. It was really cool. It wasn't my favorite layout. um it seemed like a lot of the stuff was in the back of the ship and not much going on in the front of the ship, which was kind of weird. It seemed like the whole front half of the ship just was not used.
Hmm, interesting.
Other than that, it was a really cool ship.
Nice. I know this was your first time on Royal, and I promise you, I'm going to convince you guys one of these days to take a princess cruise, because I know myself and one of your listeners, Mary, is just
Yeah.
we are like we're totally princess people, and so and I've only ever taken one princess cruise, but I've taken a Royal cruise, I've taken a couple of Carnivals, I've taken a Celebrity. I have a cruise credit now with Royal Caribbean again, so but I'm telling you guys, I think you're going to find, you're going to gravitate, I think, more towards one or the other. It is like, because Kimber, you've been on a few Carnival cruises as well, correct?
Yeah, all of my other cruises were Carnival.
Okay, so this was your only other cruise. Matt,
Right.
did you do anything besides Royal and Carnival in the past?
Yeah, I've done one Norwegian, I've done Holland America. I think that's it. Royal Caribbean. Yeah, I think that's all of them. And mostly Carnival. A few Royal Caribbeans, one Holland America, and one Norwegian. So for me, I honestly, we did a whole episode like Royal versus Carnival, as comparing like these older ships and stuff. But to be honest with you, I could be on any ship and I'm happy, because the things that truly make me enjoy cruising are some of the simplest and most basic things. I need an open air space where I can look at the ocean, and I need a way to get to these islands that I want to go and explore. So I usually look at price and some of the other amenities that you get, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. I know one of the things that Kimbra was kind of surprised by was that this particular sailing was a lot older crowd, and so there wasn't as much activity going on, which we're not big like party animal people, but at the same time, I think that was a little bit kind of weird for her. So I don't know. I don't remember where I was going with that, but really, so different cruise lines, and I would say even more importantly, different ships and different times of year have different feels to them. So like you say, people find sort of their niche. For me, the niche is whatever ship can get me to the place I need to go for the right price. And then if I have some choices, then we'll look at some of those extra things.
Do you guys have a full complement of ships that leave out of Tampa? I mean, like, for example, do you know if MSC also leaves out of Tampa as well?
They will be soon.
Yeah, so hopefully starting in November, we will actually have 6 cruise lines leaving out of Tampa. So right now it's just 3. So Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and Carnival.
Okay.
And then in November, MSC, Holland America, and is it Celebrity?
I don't remember
Something
the other
else.
one.
There
Yeah.
will be 6 cruise lines. I didn't do my homework.
That's okay. You weren't expecting this question, so I was just throwing it out there. But yeah, because I mean, like I'm like right around I don't want to say right around the corner, but I'm relatively close to the port of Long Beach, and we have primarily out of there, we have, I think, Princess goes to Mexico, and we have, I think, Norwegian will leave out of Los Angeles, Long Beach in order to go to Hawaii and then down to Ensenada and back. And then we have several Carnival cruise lines that will head down to Mexico, whether it's on a 4-day or a 7-day trip. So I'm always curious to hear what your perspectives are on this as well. And by the way, again, to my students who are out there, you definitely want to listen to the Fintastic Cruising podcast. It is absolutely fantastic. In fact, you guys just recently did a podcast on the things that you like, and the listeners chimed in as well about some things that they like about cruising, like their top 3 things. And there were some really interesting responses to that. So as we continue to go through this, we might touch on a few things. What type of room did you get on this ship? Was it indoor or inside, outside, or outside, like balcony, ocean view? What kind of room did you get?
Yeah, so the room that we booked, we actually booked this cruise as our first cruise together. So we just wanted to get on a ship to experience cruising together. So we booked the cheapest thing possible, which was guaranteed interior.
Okay.
But we didn't actually know where our room was or what our room was until 2 weeks before we went on the cruise.
Okay.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
It saved us a little bit by doing that. Not a whole lot. It was kind of the adventure of it too. But we definitely were like, let's do an interior. I prefer having some natural light in there. I like an ocean view or obviously a balcony.
Well, yeah.
If that's in my budget, I'll always go for a balcony. But I was like, let's do this. Let's just do an interior. Let's do, like you said, just go with the cheapest thing we can do to get on the ship. Because honestly, I don't need to spend that much time in the cabin anyway. So how much does it really matter? So it was an interior room, and we ended up on the deck 8.
Yeah, kind of right in the middle of everything.
Yeah, we had a really prime spot.
Yeah.
So it worked out well for us.
Well, and there's also a couple of advantages to having an interior room, but apart from just the price itself, for people like me who are insomniacs or who can't sleep, if there's even like a pinprick of light in their room, having the interior cabin, you don't have the outside, like window that sometimes light can get in and stuff like that. So there are actually advantages to having an interior. So that can be kind of cool too.
It is easy. That's my problem though with that, because I like to sleep in there, but I'm always paranoid that I'm going to oversleep at a port, and so I'm constantly waking up. What time is it? What time is it? If I overslept. I didn't do that on this one though. I was good on this one.
Yeah, the bed was really comfortable.
Oh my gosh. You wouldn't think that a bed on a cruise ship would be that comfortable, but it was more comfortable than our bed at home. So.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Princess Cruises, I'll talk to them about.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that was like a hotel bed, as opposed to Carnival, which was more like cots. So I think it was maybe it was depending upon the type of room you got. I didn't know. We got a balcony on Princess versus like the ocean views that I've had on Carnival, but who knows? I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of preference. We'll have to talk sometime about that type of thing too. Talk to me also about, like, since we're talking about accommodations right now and talking about some of the things on the cruise ship itself, what was your, because I've seen a couple of pictures of you on your website where, it's been, or actually you guys did a video that I think I saw a couple of YouTube videos specifically about this trip that we're talking about. And I think you had, main dining room that you dined at. Did you also do the buffet as well, or not?
We did for lunch. I think we did one.
Yeah, we did.
We did one evening buffet.
Yeah, we did buffet for breakfast and lunch, and then the MDR for dinner. And then, Mexico, when we did Cozumel, we did the buffet for dinner because they had a Mexican night. So,
and we like Mexican food a lot. So like we love the MDR, but we happen to be going by and we're like, they have a Mexican theme at the buffet. And so our first thought was, well, we'll just eat twice. But then we realized that, that was probably a bad idea, and I'm not sure we were up for it. So we decided, we started with let's just get a snack and then we'll go. And then we're like, let's just do dinner right here, right now.
Excellent.
And it worked out well.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's move on to the itinerary then. I want to maybe just I'm going to give you the reins to work with from this. Talk to me about the different locations you went to, and then maybe just a snippet, like one thing that you liked from each location that you went to. I'd like to also talk about maybe some of the things you did on your at sea days as well, if that's okay.
Sure. The first day was a sea day. So mostly what we did on our first and our last sea day was a little bit of relaxation. We did some trivia, and I think those were the highlights.
We played putt-putt.
We did. We played mini golf, putt-putt, whatever.
Our first sea day, we got up at like 8, and we knocked out all of the little amenity things by 11. It was awesome.
Yeah, we were very efficient. Very, very efficient.
And then we had the rest of the day to just chill.
Yeah, so that was pretty good. And then our first actual port stop was in Grand Cayman. And that was the one we were looking forward to the most. We were looking forward to both of them, but really love Grand Cayman. It is a tender port. I can say that since it's on Royal Caribbean. If it was Carnival, I'd have to say a water shuttle, but which means basically, if you're not familiar with that out there, it basically means that the ship can't actually pull into like a dock area. And so what happens is they send smaller boats out to the cruise ship. You get on the boats, and then you go over to the actual island. And these boats usually hold like 250 people or something like that. So it's not usually that big of a deal, but it can sometimes cause some delays and stuff. So in this case, we were the first ones on. We had something called the Key on Royal Caribbean, which gave us sort of some privileges. Like we got on the ship first, and we got on the tender first, and we had like a special meal on embarkation day and disembarkation. But yeah, so the shuttle takes us right over to Grand Cayman, and you get off of the shuttle, and you're in a little sort of secured area that has a few vendors there. And that's where a lot of the official excursions will meet up, is right there. And then you walk through a security checkpoint and you're in actual main Grand Cayman, which, by the way, feels really safe and comfortable place. Lots of shops. It's very touristy right there at the port. There's a lot of shops. There's a lot of restaurants, but it's definitely got like a Grand Cayman vibe to it, which is really cool if you like that Caribbean feel. For us, we were just diving with this dive shop called Eden Rock Dive Center, and it was literally a 5-minute walk from the port where we got off of the shuttle. So I called it a shuttle. So I can't help myself. So it's so close. It's so close. It's like when you're out in the water doing your dive or snorkel, you can see the cruise ships right there. So we didn't do an excursion through the cruise line. We just booked a scuba through this dive shop, which I've dove there once before. And the really neat thing about this area is that it's called Eden Rock Devil's Grotto are the coral structures or areas. So that's why it's the Eden Rock Dive Center. But the really neat thing is you can rent a locker from them for a pretty minimal amount. And then there's a ladder there. You can just get in the water and snorkel. Like if you have your own snorkel gear, or you could rent it from them too, I think. But which makes a really affordable excursion if that's kind of your thing. For us to dive there, it was a really reasonable price. We did a single dive. We could have done a 2-tank dive, which means 2 separate dives.
I have a question for you. Actually,
yeah.
I actually have 2 questions. One in reference to the Key, and the other one in reference to bringing your own equipment, because I know you guys do a lot of your own podcasting, so you're already and the videos that you have, so you're already bringing a lot of equipment. Do you think it's advantageous for you guys to bring your own equipment or rent it typically? Like, what would you recommend?
So it kind of depends. So we snorkel a lot. So we go to the springs around here. On the cruises, we snorkel or dive. So we snorkel a lot. So we have our own equipment, and it's a lot more affordable for us to just have our own and bring it. Now, if it's something that you do like once a year, then go ahead and rent it.
Although this is what I would say though, like if you rent gear, if you do a snorkeling excursion, it's probably going to be included. But if you're going to like a private island, or you're going to do something like this on your own and you rent it, it's probably going to average about $10 to $15 to rent snorkeling gear, maybe even a little bit more. So if you buy a decent set of snorkeling gear, you're probably going to spend anywhere from $100 to $200. You could spend a lot more than that, trust me. But and I have. But you don't need to get decent quality gear. You can do that for around $100. Go to a dive shop. Don't go to your big box stores. Get the right stuff. It's like when somebody buys say a telescope and they get the cheap one and then they lose all interest in astronomy because it never worked right. It's the same thing with snorkeling. The reason that you want to bring your own gear, because it is an extra bag that we take along.
Yeah.
The reason you want to bring it is because of the mask, really. The mask that you get at some of these places, it might not fit right. It might not be a very good constructed mask. It's going to leak. It's going to totally change your snorkeling experience unless you luck out and get a decent mask. Fins, some places give you these little stubby fins that you might as well just be barefoot. Other places may not give you fins at all. Some places will give you decent fins, so I'm not as particular on that. The snorkel, it's a personal preference. Some people are like, I don't want that in my mouth. How many people have had that in their mouth? Do they really disinfect them? Do they really clean them? I don't know. That never really bothered me, but it's really easy for me to throw a snorkel in the bag since I already got my mask and fins. And it's not really a whole lot more to carry with you. So yeah, I would say if you're going to snorkel every time you cruise, I would at least invest in a decent mask because you can easily throw that in your suitcase. If you're going to snorkel once ever, then just rent it.
But moving into scuba, then all of a sudden now you have oxygen tanks and other things like that. You can't very well bring stuff like that on a cruise ship. So
You can't bring an air tank on. Yeah, if you do that, then you're going to have some problems getting through security with that. But and then they're heavy. And honestly, even people that go to, like, say, the Keys from other places in the United States, they're probably they might bring their own gear, but they're probably not bringing a tank, most likely. Some people do. But I've always rented my scuba gear, which is basically a buoyancy compensator vest, weight belt, and the regulator that you breathe through that hooks to the tank and the tank itself.
Mhm.
However, one of the things that we're changing, because since Kimbra got certified and now I'm going to hopefully get to dive a lot more, is what we've been doing through quarantine when we're not doing work is just researching scuba gear, because we want to buy our own, because it's going to save us money. And what we have found through our hours and hours of research is that there are a lot of travel type of scuba gear. So the buoyancy compensator vest, that's actually a category, or travel BCs or travel fins and all that sort of thing. So I think that our plan, once we get out in the real world, is to get some actual scuba gear. And I think we're going to take it with us on cruises if we're going to go diving, because even that equipment, it may not work as well, it may not fit as comfortably. Is it gonna keep me from scuba diving? No. Am I gonna have a great time even if I use the stuff they're renting? Yes. Is the stuff they're renting safe? Almost definitely. But it's like anything else. When you get used to your own things and they fit just right, and then you kind of get spoiled, and it's like, eh. And if you dive enough, then you're gonna get your money back eventually, just by saving that rental gear, especially if you can dive locally.
Absolutely. I want to get your take on something else just while I'm thinking about it. When I was looking at a couple of different tours that were done in the area, they had obviously, scuba diving that you have, but you also have these other ones for people who are not experienced scuba divers. They're kind of like a helmet that you put on, like an oxygen helmet that goes completely over your head. I don't know how that even works, but I've seen these pictures of people that are just, you're not carrying the oxygen with you. It's actually being pumped into you from I guess a boat that's above you or something like that. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's actually a couple different things. So the one you're talking about is usually just called like a helmet dive. And then there's also one called snuba, which is basically that regulator you'd breathe on through a scuba tank, but it's a surface supplied air system. I think those are interesting. They're great for people who maybe aren't comfortable with diving, but they want to get that underwater experience. They're very controlled. They have to be in shallow water because there are some things that happen to the air underwater and decompression and stuff. So they have to be fairly shallow. But I have not done one myself, but I know several people who have, and they really enjoyed them. The thing that I would say, as somebody who's very comfortable in the water and loves to be underwater, it's one of those things where if you can scuba dive, you're probably going to like that 100 times more, because you have so much more freedom and so much more availability to explore. But if you're not comfortable with that, if maybe you're just not sure about it, it's a great way to experience the underwater world.
Excellent. One other thing I wanted to talk with you about just before we get back into the Grand Cayman, I know you are going off on a complete tangent. I was literally just listening to Doug Parker's radio show this early this morning, and he had a person on there who also had gotten the key from Royal Caribbean. What was your experience like? Did you guys think it was worth it?
Yeah, so we actually got a really good deal on it, which is why we went ahead and got it. We were looking at doing the internet anyways,
Yeah.
and the key includes their internet. So the thing with the key is if you get it for one person in the room, everybody in the room has to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So we both got it. It was only $3 more per day than the internet. So it was a really good value, and I think it was like a really discounted price at the time, so we got lucky there. But it gave us, we were able to get on the ship really early. We got a lunch from the Chops Grill menu when we got on the ship. We could have dropped our carry-on stuff there and they would have delivered it to our room later, which we didn't. We carried it with us because it was like our tech stuff.
Yes.
We got
like a la carte breakfast on disembarkation day.
Yeah, disembarkation.
And priority disembarkation.
Yeah, you guys get priority embarkation and debarkation with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the excursion or
the tender
going over to Grand Cayman.
And then there were special times for like the rock wall, and then
nice.
I think rock wall was the only thing that our ship had
on this ship. Yeah.
But other ships like the flight thing, what's it called? Whatever the thing is that you can like
anything that have a line.
There's like special times that like people with the key can do.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
And my understanding is that the key is not, it's not a one size fits all. Like it's different, like real keys.
So it's not a skeleton key.
It's not a skeleton key. No. So basically it depends a lot on your cruise that you're going on to whether it's worth it or not. And I know I've heard a lot of people who are like, it's worth it. And other people are like, it's not worth it. And I'm like, I think it just depends. Like not even on the individual, but on the individual cruise that you're going on. So there's a lot to consider there. For us, like Kimbra said, we were going to do the internet anyway. Now, to be fair, we probably would have only got it for one of us. So we did spend a little bit more money, but it wasn't that much more. And we really liked having the internet, and their internet, which is called Voom, is really good. Like really good for a cruise ship internet. It was awesome.
And do you know, did they give you like priority seating for like entertainment as well? Or is that included with that?
It is included. We didn't do that. We didn't do any of the entertainment shows, which is not normal for me.
Well, we did like Love and Marriage and stuff.
Yeah,
like
but
you guys did trivia too anyway, so it's kind of
but we didn't go to like any of the song and dance shows and stuff.
No.
I'm pretty sure it includes that. We just didn't do it.
On some of the larger Royal Caribbean ships where they have the bigger productions where you actually have to make reservations and that sort of thing, I think it becomes much more valuable in those situations, like on the Oasis class ships and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So on this smaller venue where the theater, and our particular cruise was very low capacity anyway, so there was really not a need for it. But in certain circumstances, like especially if you had like a Broadway caliber show or something, that's when you really get that bang for your buck.
Perfect. Well, let's continue with Grand Cayman. I know you guys were talking about the coral reefs and getting into that. So I'm sorry to have interrupted with this complete tangent, but please, by all means, continue.
So basically, we did our dive. We got there early.
We got there early, and our dive, I don't know, I think we got there like almost an hour early because we got off the tender so quickly and it was so close to the port. So our plan was to dive and then snorkel around a little bit until we were ready to get back on the ship. But we got there an hour early and the guy was like, yeah, dude, you're early. So he was like, you can go across the street, grab a coffee and come back. Or if you want to just jump in and snorkel, you can do that. So we decided to go ahead and do our snorkeling first. So we jumped in, we snorkeled, and then we got out and got ready for our dive. We dove, and then we decided not to snorkel afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah, and let me just say that the other time I went to Eden Rock, my friend and I, we'd emailed them back and forth to make our reservation to dive, and we got there really early again. We weren't sure what time we were going to make it, and we were like 2 or 3 hours early. And we got there and we were like, look, we know we're 2 or 3 hours early. And in that case, they didn't have anybody else booked with us. So they were like, do you want to just go now? And we're like, okay. So if you are a diver or a snorkeler, but especially if you're a diver and you are going to Grand Cayman, I would highly recommend Eden Rock Dive Center. They were so friendly and nice and just great experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have one really quick question for you there. Was it on this dive that you got, and by the way, again, for my students, if you have not, you have to not only get their podcast, but you also have to take a look at their YouTube videos as well, because you guys have an amazing video that has an extraordinary video of a spotted eel that you guys saw while you were down there. I'm not sure whether that was Grand Cayman or whether that was a different island.
That was Cozumel.
That was Cozumel. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in just a second. But I mean, for purposes of YouTube, are you guys through Fintastic Studios or Fintastic Cruising?
So it can be a little confusing because we actually have both. But Fintastic Cruising, our YouTube channel, Fintastic Cruising, is sometimes our podcast makes it over there, sometimes it doesn't. But very few people listen to it over there, so we kind of ignore that one a little bit. But Fintastic Studios is our main YouTube channel, and that is where all of our video content is focused. So any of our cruise vlogs will be over there, as well as like cruise creature videos and stuff like that we put up. But that's where you'll find that vlog, is Fintastic Studios.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So anything else that we did over there in Grand Cayman before we continue moving on?
I think we shopped a little bit, and then we head back to the ship.
Awesome.
Yeah, they have like some pretty good shopping there, and there is some hot sauce there, and there is some rum cakes there, which I prefer. And the hot sauce has a rather unfortunate name, named after a sort of famous, I guess, or comical famous. I don't know. Anyway, it's a it's a controversial name too, but it's really good hot sauce. But they actually, the same company makes something called Blackbeard rum cake, and if you're a fan of rum cake, it's my favorite rum cake I've had of any of the Caribbean rum cakes. I feel like it's rummier, even though the one in Mexico claims it's the rummiest. I don't think it is, and it's just a lot of good flavor. So I was on a mission for this Blackbeard rum cake, which we found, and I got my hot sauce, and it's a rum flavored hot sauce, and and then we got back on.
We went to Del Sol.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, did sunglasses?
No, I've been to Grand Cayman. This was my fourth time there, and I never went to Del Sol. So one of my things is going to Del Sol and getting something from every Del Sol.
She does have sunglasses.
I do have sunglasses, yes, but I didn't get them this time. I needed a shirt that said Grand Cayman.
Okay.
So got that. All was well.
Very good. Okay, so back to the ship then. And then what was your next jump on the itinerary?
So the next day we went to Cozumel, Mexico, and that was not a tender port. And what did we do there? We
went to a place called Chankanaab,
yes,
which is actually a national park there. And so I've been there a few times. This is the first time I went. I booked it through the cruise line, and then I realized that here's a good cruise tip. This is a great example of an excursion you don't need to do through the cruise line, because you can go to their website, you can get a very discounted ticket there. You can get a cab, which is very regulated in Cozumel as to what price you pay. It's posted everywhere. And because it is so close to the port, literally like a 5-minute drive from the port. And we were there until 8 o'clock or something like that night?
7, I think.
Something.
Yeah,
And Chankanaab closed at like 5. So I felt super comfortable doing this. So we jumped in a cab, went to Chankanaab. Chankanaab is awesome. So it's a marine sanctuary, but they also have a free sea lion show. You can pay to do a dolphin encounter, a manatee encounter. But the snorkeling there is pretty nice. You can do a beginner scuba there for people that have never scubaed, so you can like actually try scuba diving there. They've got some different food venues. The one we got actually came with a buffet, which the food was but the juice, oh my gosh.
That was the best juice ever.
I don't know what we drink in the States, but it's not that, because they had orange juice, they had lime juice, they had mango juice, apple juice. So I'm a mango fan, so I hit the mango juice, and like normally I'm like, oh, this is really good, it's mango juice, but I was like, oh my god, take me back to the well. and then she, what did you have?
I had apple juice.
And I'm like, okay, it's apple juice. No,
this was, I was like, you should try this apple juice. He's like, it's apple juice. I said, try the apple juice.
Like, just settle down, you know?
Right,
it's like, this is not just your apple juice. I don't know what they put into it, but it's making me a lot happier.
Their juices were amazing.
Yeah, the lime juice. I mean, and you think lime juice, it was like limeade, but it was so good. It was so good.
I have 2 questions for you, and one is in reference to the actual tours, and the other one's in reference to the food that we're talking about right now. In reference to the tours, if I know that I've heard from some of my students before, they're afraid to book off anything except for off the cruises themselves, because they're concerned about the cruise port or the cruises leaving without them. Did that cross your mind in terms of that, if you were going to try and book not through the cruise?
Yeah, so I am one who falls more on the side of booking through the cruise line. A lot of people are very, very adamantly opposed to doing that. I, for me, it's situational. So if it's a port that I'm familiar with, if it's an itinerary that I feel very comfortable with, like Chankanaab, like going to Eden Rock, then I have no problem booking outside of the cruise line. But if I was going to do, say, like a Mayan ruin, or something where I had to get on a bus and drive for half an hour or more,
Yeah.
I am probably not, unless that excursion is due back hours before the ship is ready to leave, I am probably going to pay a little bit extra money and book it through the cruise line. Um, a lot of my friends are a little more lenient than I am on that, but it is a legitimate concern. And although a lot of these companies do guarantee that you'll be back at the ship, and a lot of them are reputable companies, so it's probably fair. I still don't want to have to worry about them paying for a flight for me to get to the next port or something like that, and going through all that hassle. Where if it's the cruise line, I feel like it's going to be much less hassle for me. There's not going to be a middle person to deal with. They're either going to wait for me, or they're going to find a way to get me to where I need to go.
Excellent. I would agree with that. I think I'm more comfortable, and I've had, I mean, because whenever I've traveled without cruising to a number of different countries that are out there, I'll go through like Viator, which is a tour site operating website or app that you can get on your phone. And I've had nothing but the best with them. But it's always in the back of my mind that if I don't go through the cruise company, it's, gosh, are they going to leave without me? Am I going to have to deal with all this hassle? So sometimes I may compare the prices, and if it's not that big of a deal, or if it's not that much of a difference, then I'll be like, okay, well, you know what? I'll just go to the cruise company if that's the case. It just makes me feel more comfortable. The other thing,
sometimes you get, I'm sorry, sometimes you get a better deal, and sometimes you can get a better experience if you go outside of the company. Like, for example, back in Grand Cayman, of course, it's famous for the Stingray City, and you can book that through the cruise line, and you'll go on with like a herd of people. There's another place called Captain Marvin's, which my friends and family have used before, and it's a lower cost, and it's like a much smaller group that goes, so their experience is a lot better for a lower cost. But that's another example of one where they're back like 2 hours before, and it's so they feel really comfortable with it. But yeah, I don't mind spending an extra $20-$30 if I'm going to have that peace of mind.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. The other topic I wanted to bring up, since you were mentioning these incredible juices, is when I've been doing traveling, especially outside of the United States, I'm used to getting pretty good quality food here in the United States. Settle down, okay? Like whenever I travel, especially and I know you guys haven't been to Europe yet. We talked about that on your podcast before, but going to Italy, going to Spain, going to France. Good God. There is no way there are not words in the English language to describe the type of quality of the food that I get at some of these places. So for my students that are out there, please, please, please get off the ships, get out of the airports. Don't do the McDonald's thing unless that's your thing. Try some of the local cuisine, because I'm telling you, sometimes it is not even comparable. There just isn't words to describe what some of the wonderful things that you can get outside of the States are. Things that you may have never had before, or things that you might compare over here. It's like, oh, it's a pizza. I get those from Papa John's all the time. No, relax. It's not like that. Especially if you're in Italy, they've been doing this for thousands of years. Believe me, it's amazing. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So.
No, I can give you a good example in the Caribbean where that's the case with food. And that is beans and rice. So beans and rice are okay. Like, I'll eat it. But whenever I go to these ports, like I mentioned Honduras earlier, and they have beans and rice at a buffet, and it's just like, it's not the same beans and rice. I don't know what they do to it that's different, but it is like a whole nother level of quality. Something's going on there.
They know their spices and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in fact, some of the places out there, some of the islands, that's their trade, is in spices. So they know exactly what to use for certain foods, and it's kind of a science for a lot of them out there. So, and especially the seafood, sometimes you'll get the best. I know you guys aren't like totally fish people, but unless you're like playing with them, but eating them and playing with them. But it's just one of those things that I think that if you're really wanting quality, like really good quality seafood, some of these places have it like literally right out of the water. In some cases, it can be amazing. So,
Absolutely.
so all right, cool. So, what other stuff did you do while you were there in Chongqing?
So let's see. Well, we got there
Mhm.
and we went and found a chair and jumped in the water,
Um,
basically.
Right into the water. That's my MO. But we didn't snorkel all day. We got out, we ate lunch.
Yeah, we
Snorkeled a little bit more.
Uh-huh. And then we got out and walked around. So they have like some trails with some, what's the word? I couldn't think of it last time either. Mayan ruins, but they're fake.
Replicas.
There we go. They have like some replica ruins and stuff like that. So we walked around and looked at that. They have some crocodiles. So we looked at those and the spiny tail iguanas.
Which are the crocodiles are I guess rescue crocodiles.
Yeah.
The iguanas are wild iguanas. And the iguanas that you should see in Mexico, in that part of Mexico, are not the green iguanas that you see everywhere. Those are invasive in a lot of places, but these are the beautiful gray and black. Sometimes they have yellow or white on them. Mexican spiny-tailed iguanas, and they are abundant in this place.
And they're so cool.
You'll see those in the video too, and on the
Yeah.
Cozumel video.
Absolutely wonderful. So then you guys get back on the ship, and is it then back to Tampa after this?
We had a sea day afterwards, and then back to Tampa.
Okay, fantastic. How was the disembarkation process to get off the ship?
So it was really quick and easy. So because of the key, we had a breakfast in the main dining area. So we got our breakfast, and then they actually took us right to get off the ship. So because we had the key, we were like, okay, we're done eating. They're like, great, we'll take you. So we like skipped all the people and just like walked off the ship. So it was super quick. We were probably, from the time we were done eating to the time we were like at our car, was maybe 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was practically the time it took us to walk because
yeah.
And because we had the key, we checked our luggage, which sometimes I carry it off, sometimes I check it, but we went in and checked our luggage, and they had it in a special spot for the key. Now, It was also, like I said, it was a low capacity cruise that helped, but yeah, it was definitely, I can't imagine disembarkation going any smoother.
Yeah.
Very nice. So let's talk about post-vacation thoughts then. Thinking about this trip, I mean, what were some things that would be like a pro of someone who'd be maybe wanting to go to Grand Cayman or to Cozumel?
She's looking at me. Where do I start? I mean, I always feel like, my perspective may be a little biased because I am so into the marine life and everything. But Grand Cayman is just a beautiful island, and the people there are super friendly. And, it just feels like you're in the Caribbean when you're there. Like some places feel more like that than others. And I think Grand Cayman is one that feels more like that than most places. For me, there's a lot to do on Grand Cayman that I've never done, and I've been there several times. I can't stay away from diving when I go there, but I'd like to go there and spend a whole week. It's just a remarkable island, beautiful island.
Yeah, I agree. I've been to Grand Cayman 4 times. I have done something different every time, and there's still so much that I want to do. And same with Cozumel. I've been to Cozumel 4 times. I have done something different every time, and there's still so much more to do. So there's some ports that I've been to that I'm like, what would I want to do here? These 2 ports, I can't think of enough things to do.
Yeah, I think Cozumel and Nassau are probably the most commonly visited ports in the Caribbean, depending on whether you're doing Eastern or Western. Mm-hmm. And I like Nassau's fine, but Cozumel I could just keep going back to over and over again. Again, I've done a few different things there. I've been to Chonkanab, I think 3 times. I've been to maybe 4 times. I've done a few other things, but there's so much. It's like you just have to choose which one you want to do. And there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of different things to do there. So there's something for everybody.
Yeah, I also, those are 2 of the ports that I've been to that I feel very safe and comfortable just walking around. So there's no fear of like, if I walk out of this little port area, what's going to happen? Like I have no issues feeling comfortable like walking out of the main little port area and just walking around.
That's great. And I think it speaks to um, the the revisiting ability of those locations, especially like you were mentioning, where you've been to Cozumel 4 times or you've been to Grand Cayman 4 times, and each time you're finding something new and interesting to do. Because I know you're going to have people that they're going to go, they're looking for the beach. They're going to go, they're looking for the rum. And you can get that on almost any of the islands that are there. But if you're looking for that repeatability, then there's something to be said there. It's just like the first time I went to from Long Beach to Ensenada, I went to go see a lot more of the touristy things. There's something there called the Blowhole, which is a natural formation where it's like a geyser that's there. So we saw that as well as some shopping. And then the second time I went there, I went on a wine tour, so it was like a completely different type of situation. And in both cases, I had a great time. So I think that's something that lends to people who want to maybe go to a port, but are looking to kind of step outside of the norm. There are some great revisiting ability to some locations because there's such a variety of things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are two good examples of that, especially Cozumel and Grand Cayman. If you like the water, if you don't like the water, like one of the ladies we work with is not a fan of the water, and she went cruising and she didn't like Grand Cayman. And I was like, how could you not like Grand Cayman? She's like, well, I don't like the beach. She doesn't swim. I'm like, okay.
And she works at the aquarium?
Yes.
Yeah.
She likes the fish, but she doesn't like to be in there with them. So I could see, if that's your thing, then you may not like it as much, but for the rest of us.
Now, what I would also ask is, not that there's a con about going on, like there's pros and cons, and sometimes there are cons about things, but I don't like to think of traveling having any major cons. But maybe what would be something that a first-time traveler going to either Grand Cayman or Cozumel should be aware of?
With Grand Cayman, I would say that the fact that it is a tender port, I have always been fortunate, in Kimbra too, where none of our cruises have had to cancel that port due to choppy water. Or
there was one time I went there that because of choppy water, we actually had to tender further down to a different area of the island. So we still were able to go, but our excursion was completely changed and pushed back. So like our plan was to go on our excursion and then go to 7 Mile Beach, because the first time we had been there, we loved the beach because we stopped there for like 5 minutes, and we wanted to go on this excursion and then go spend time at the beach. But because of that, we were not able to do that because we had to tender somewhere completely different. So it wasn't canceled, but it did change our plans completely.
Okay. So just to be mindful of something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people will say when you go on a cruise, and this is probably true for any vacation, set your expectations to realistic and don't get too disappointed if something changes, because it's likely to happen in many situations. And Grand Cayman is one of those places where your experience could change depending on the weather, and you have to be able to be mentally prepared for that and roll with it if and when it does happen.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate that. Any other things, like any value adds or cost savings or best practices that you guys use when you're doing your traveling?
I would say book early or look at the time of year that you're booking. We plan this cruise for February, which is, right after New Year's and Christmas and right before like spring break. So we kind of hit that middle spot there, and it's, a little chillier in certain areas. So it was a lot more cost effective for us to do that. And then I typically, I don't know if you do, we'll book in like the fall. So like we've got our October cruise, which kind of falls right into that as well. So it's kind of like end of like hurricane season, and then right before the holidays, after summer. So it's kind of in that more cost effective kind of area as well. And then of course, the earlier you book, that gives you time to kind of pay off your cruise.
Excellent.
Yeah. I guess my advice, I would say, I could give you tips all day, but I guess the one thing that really I think paid off for us at these two ports specifically is, before you go, jump over onto Google Earth, Google Maps, and do some research. Look at the layout. You can even download those maps onto your phone so you can take them with you. You don't have to worry about having a cellular connection or anything like that. But map out, if you're not doing an excursion where you're leaving from point A and coming back, map that out, figure it out, look at some of the shops, even though it's Mexico and it's Grand Cayman, they're still in the 21st century. They have websites, they have ways to communicate with them, they have things that you can find out information about them. You can make choices to plan your visit, and you can have a better experience that way, and kind of more comfortable, know where you're going, what you're doing. You're not stuck there going, well, which way do we go? I don't know. Where do we go? That kind of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Matt and Kimbra. And by the way, thank you both for being on this. I really appreciate it. And for more wonderful best practices, travel tips, especially in reference to either cruising or marine life and knowing more about cruise creatures, you can always go to their podcast, which is available. If you want to take a look at, visit the site that their podcast is hosted from, you can certainly go to fantasticcruising.podbean.com, or probably the best way to do it is just go and subscribe to it. I highly recommend it. I love your guys' podcast. You guys do an amazing job every single week. I'm learning more and more things from you guys. So again, thank you so much for doing the wonderful work that you guys do on that.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Scott.
Thank you.
It was fun.
And I appreciate it. Now, if for my students, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to know about, you can certainly send me an email at scott@theprofessortravel.com. If you're viewing this on YouTube, you can click the bell icon above you in order to be notified when new videos come out. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe. If you like what you're seeing, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're listening to this on any of your podcasts, please, by all means, I encourage you, please give us a rating. We really appreciate it. But until the next time, make every day a travel adventure. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.